Katie, did you ever write poetry, like for fun and on purpose?
No. At best, it was probably like a school assignment or something, but it's not one of those writing skills that I'm really, really good at. I always tried to make things rhyme, or like I could probably write a limerick, but nothing worth other people's time. What about you, Kerry?
I wouldn't suggest it's worth other people's time, but I did used to. So I started writing poetry in the fourth grade because our teacher made us do a poem all of one syllable words. And so all the other kids were doing like Matt the cat sat on a mat and all this stuff. And I did Let the Cold Winds Blow. I was hooked. I think it was like the what do they say that strictures kind of actually stoke creativity, like so having limitations made me more creative. So I wrote poetry like the old fashioned way in spiral bound notebooks and all that stuff. And I even did a few in college, like for the college publication, but I didn't keep up with it. I wasn't like, whatever. I had fun rhythm and all that stuff. I performed poetry live one time. I got selected to perform my poetry at like a live performance venue in Orleans. And I felt so awkward doing it. I wore this like electric purple gown and showed I looked very dramatic. And I did my poetry reading. And after that, I was like, I think I'm like largely done with poetry.
Well, you know what, Kerry, snaps for you. And I think it's time to punch out. On today's episode of Punch Out with Katie and Kerry, we're talking with Chloë Forbes-Kindlen. Chloë is an online business strategist and Squarespace website designer, but Chloë, we're not talking about any of that. We're only talking about your side hustles and hobbies. So I'm terrible at poetry. Kerry is a bit beatnik. Let's talk about your poetry.
Well, I will say, just because I write it doesn't mean it's any good. I always preface with the fact that it's Dr. Seuss style so that you can know it's probably going to irritate you after about 30 seconds. And it's going to be as good as a 5-year-old writing poetry. But it's fun. I think it's a fun way to express yourself. So for me, I am terrible at English. I was always really, really bad at English at school.
Because you're Scottish?
That could be true. But I remember being just so scared in class and just freezing up. And I had this weird idea, like this limitation that I wasn't creative at all. And it used to paralyze me a lot. But when I was younger, my mom once told me, if you're ever dealing with something and you don't want to talk about it, write it down on a piece of paper. So I started to write it down on a piece of paper. And when I was about 5 or 6, I decided I wanted to be a rapper. I couldn't rap. I've never been able to master that, but I'm not going to lie. If you ever like sneaked a peek into my room on a Friday night, then you may catch me trying. I couldn't do it. So I decided, let me just try poetry and let me try and just express what I'm feeling or what I'm going through or anything like that. And that was my creative outlet. So it was something that was just for me, and no one could tell me it was really bad because I knew it was really bad. But it was fun.
Now I want to see you rap though.
Oh, no. Well, I'd have to have a few drinks before I let that one out. I did do it one time. Do you remember Blab? I one time did it on Blab when that was around.
Gosh.
I was fundraising so we could go to New York and help at a food bank. And I was just like, okay, I'm going to sell strategy sessions. But also, if you want to see me rap on camera and you want to pay me $50 for that, donate and we're good.
Oh, that's fantastic. I hope you still have a video of that.
I don't, but that's probably a good thing.
Track down every copy there is and destroyed it.
Yes. I do have when I was, I think I was 14. It was when YouTube first came out. And I remember in the UK, we were big on Bebo, MySpace and Hotmail, and then YouTube came out. And when on the social media platform Bebo, you could have a video that you placed on your profile. So at that point in my life, when I'd given up on rapping, I decided I wanted to be a DJ, which Also did not work out at all. But I thought I was so cool at the time. I gave myself a name. You're not allowed to know it because there's
Oh,
video
come
on
come
YouTube.
on.
No, I can't. I always like live with this fear that someone will uncover the videos that I have on YouTube of me trying to be a DJ.
Was it
To
DJ
make these
Chloe? It was DJ Chloe.
No,
wasn't
it was so
Well, Kerry and I
bad.
will find it. We're both pretty good at finding this stuff.
I will get the best private detective in Scotland.
You
to
don't
track it
want
down.
to.
I'll call them up today. It would be worth it to me just to find them.
Goodness. I really do still have like, there's two things I'm scared of in my life, like that make me cringe and cripple. One is that when I was 6, I accidentally walked into someone's wrong house. I can't even talk about it because I still am like, oh.
Traumatized. What was it, like a meth lab? You make it sound really bad.
No. Oh, okay. So my mom, we were at somebody's house. I don't know who because I was 6. And she said, can you go and get my cigarettes from the car? So I was like, okay. I didn't want to because I didn't know where I was. So I go out to the car. I get her cigarettes. I go to come back in and I don't know how I did it. I walked into somebody else's house, sat in their kitchen.
And gave them cigarettes.
No, I opened their fridge, poured orange juice, drank the orange juice. They shouted a man's name. So they must have thought, like, been expecting somebody to be coming. I walked out. There was like an old lady and like her daughter feeding her. I was just mortified. Oh, like my insides are still crippled thinking about it. And then I ran out. So that's one of them. The second one is somebody finding my YouTube videos from 2006. I live with those fear. No, I don't
housebreaking as a hobby.
Oh, so bad.
All right, so you've wanted to be a rapper, you wanted to be a DJ, but then you settled on writing Dr. Seuss style poems. So why Dr. Seuss style?
Well, I think it's just I like I said, I was really bad at English. I couldn't even tell you all the different style of poems there are, but I just like the way words rhymed. I thought it was fun and playful and silly. And I usually write when I'm dealing with something hard that I'm going through, like something difficult that I need to make sense of. And for me, by making it rhyme and just making it fun and silly, it takes it stops being painful or a struggle, and it makes it kind of more silly and lighthearted and easier to deal with. So that's like a Scottish thing too. I think that we tend to laugh in the face of like
Tragedy?
any kind of struggle or tragedy. Yeah. So
That's
it was my way of doing
also,
it.
Chloe.
Wow, there we go. We got that in common.
Katie, your sense of humor is very much that way too. I think all of ours is, but mine doesn't rhyme. Not suggesting never did my poetry, like I'm saying sometimes it rhymed, but like not as a matter of course. But did you ever share it with anybody?
Not I share some stuff. Like you'll find I'll sometimes share an Instagram caption and I'll just share a poem. Or if I think there's something going on in the world or that I want to talk about and share my voice, I don't always find it easy to articulate. And I have this fear that I'll come across wrong sometimes with just trying to articulate what I'm trying to say. So I'll write a poem and I'll share that sometimes, like online somewhere. Most of them I keep to myself. I have a place that I share them for me. And then I have them where, like, if I've dealt with something and I've written the poem and someone comes to me and they have like a similar issue, I'll share it with them. So I remember earlier this year, the comedian Jessica Kirsten, her dad passed away, which was really sad. So I had written a poem for my granddad passing away, and it was about the same time. So I shared that with her, and then I felt like, well, then I can give you something, and you can get something from it too. So sometimes I share them. Most of the times I don't. It just depends.
So the next time I walk into somebody else's house by accident, I'm going to call you and ask you to send me the appropriate poem.
It's so bad. I can't. I really like, even just standing here, I'm like, oh my goodness.
You know, it doesn't matter to them at all, right? Like, you didn't do anything. You drank one glass of orange juice. Like, no one is coming to arrest you.
It
It's
was
all right.
just the whole
You're in a
thing.
safe space.
You know, they tell this story every year at Christmas. Like, remember that one time that this girl came in and sat down and drank our orange juice? That was
Like
hilarious.
Goldilocks or something.
Right. It was crazy. And
No,
you know what's funny? I've gone into like
the whole
wrong
thing?
car. Well, yeah. I've like often I've like sat in I have gone into somebody else's car before thinking it was mine, which is also a whole other story.
But
My
there's so
mom
many
did
cars
one
like
better.
that.
She got in a taxi. No, she got in somebody's car thinking it was a taxi. They drove her all the way into town, just being a nice neighbor. And she was like, "How much do I owe you?" And he was like, "I'm not a taxi. I'm your neighbor."
So it's a family trait.
Must be.
Yeah. So that's like, you don't even know your neighbors and you don't know what a taxi looks like.
Right.
I can understand it with Uber. Like if you call for an Uber
Mhm.
and like a Toyota Camry pulls up and that's what you were expecting.
Well, here, a lot of the taxis look like that. They just look like regular cars. So unless you look for the little badge in her, look at me trying to defend her because I've done the same thing. But yeah. Well, it
So
makes
did
for
you-
fun stories.
Definitely. Did you start when you like went into the wrong house? Did you start putting around the kitchen and like cooking? Was that the beginning of your love of cooking?
Oh, no. You know, I hated cooking growing up. I did not like it at all. It was the worst thing to me. My mom, she has always worked in hospitality. She's been a chef, she's been a waitress, she's been a manageress, and I always saw her love of cooking and was like, I want to love something that much. Like I wish I could dedicate my life because I always felt like I was interested in everything. And I couldn't like keep focused. I was like, well, I like doing this, but also I want to try that and I want to try this and I want to try that. And I have to work really hard to stay focused. But she seemed to love it. I did not like it. I didn't like cooking. I always burned everything. I remember making an apple crumble in a plastic box at school and being so proud that I did this in my class. I came home and I put it in the oven and almost burned my entire kitchen down. So I didn't like it for years. And then in 2016, after I had been really ill for a long time, and I just decided like I want to get healthy. And instead of food being my enemy, I want to try and befriend it. And I also learned that I had a couple of allergies. I had celiac disease and I couldn't have dairy. And so the challenge of not being able to have those foods is what made me excited to learn to cook. Because then it became a challenge that I had to solve a problem. So I was like, how can I make food the most healthy that it wasn't even just dairy and gluten. I was like, okay, what other allergies do people have? Like, how can I make it something delicious, even with all of these restrictions? And then I went even further and I was like, okay, well, a lot of people don't have money. So how do I make really cheap food that also has all these restrictions? So it kind of became like a game. And it was the game that I fell in love with rather than necessarily like, I'm not really super passionate about like cooking in the way that a lot of chefs are. And I'm not even that good at it either, but it's so fun to me.
I think you just found your new YouTube show.
That could be interesting.
Bring back your DJ channel and change it into a cooking show.
Cooking with Chloe.
Yes,
Well,
this
just
is
not
great.
burn the house down.
Well, you have
I
to get
heard that
really big. Get really big so that when you walk into people's houses and just start seeing what they have and start cooking with it, like
It's
they
normal.
go, "Oh, it's Chloe." It's like
Yeah.
cooking with Chloe. Yeah, they get excited about it.
Be like a drop-in appearance. We're starting the show. What's in your kitchen?
I still don't like cooking, Katie. We've talked about this before, but for you, is cooking like you just have to like sustain your body, so and you have limitations or whatever on what you can eat, so you almost have to do it, or because I would get really good at just like eating out, but picking only the one thing on the menu I could have. That's probably what I would do.
That I definitely do that when I'm eating out. It was more like, I felt like food was started to become scary to me a little bit because I was like, I don't want to get ill every time I eat out. And people don't really know what they're talking about. And a lot of times people think that it's just like a lot of people, there was this trend of people didn't want to eat gluten. And so people didn't take it always as seriously as they needed to when you went out places. So there would be cross-contamination and things like that. So it was definitely like a need. And so it started with like, okay, well, I have to learn how to cook for myself, even though I hate food and I hate cooking right now. I have to learn this thing. But also I learned along the way what I enjoy to eat. And that wasn't like the food that I was necessarily brought up with. And so being able to explore foods that I actually enjoyed eating and didn't make me sick, because I had had these allergies for a long time, just didn't know that that's what was going on. So a lot of times when I didn't like food or I didn't like eating, it was because it was hurting me, but I didn't really have the awareness it was an allergy. So the more that I kind of started to dive into that, then the more excited I got about it. And then I fell in love with it. And then I also fell in love with all the different ways that we can help our body and support our body and care for our body, as if it's like it is a living organism, but it's just cool to learn how nutrients affect different parts of our body and how we can change our DNA and do all kinds of cool things just from the food we eat. And so now I see it as like food is medicine. So that's
I've been through that exact scenario. I didn't know that I had all of these allergies for a very long time. So very similarly, every time I ate, I would get very sick and it was painful and scary. And I remember after a bunch of series of tests, I came home, had this list of things I couldn't eat. And I just stood in my kitchen because I was starving, because I hadn't eaten, because I was afraid of eating. And I just cried because I was like, I don't know where to start. And to hear that you've been able to turn it into such a positive is really, really inspiring. I struggled for a very long time and sort of stuck with the same like 5 or 6 foods, very bland, very boring. And it can make you very resentful of the whole thing. And you're like, well, forget it. I'm just going to go eat what I want. It doesn't matter anyway. And you go through like these cycles of like the good and bad. But it's just so nice to hear that you've been able to turn it into something so positive. So what are some of your favorite dishes to make for yourself at this time that don't include dairy, that don't include gluten, or a lot of the other hidden allergens that people might not be aware of?
Well, I would say I've been exactly where you are. And I still get that, by the way. Like in the last month, I've been not so well. I have hypothyroidism as well. So that's been playing up, and it can be very disheartening. And you can get very resentful for sure. Mm-hmm. And so it's easy to go down the negative path, which could hurt yourself more, which I've done, by the way. I definitely have been known to self-sabotage. But I think, like, as you say, finding a few foods. So one of the things I did was the same thing. Like, I could only eat 5 or 6 foods for a really long time. And I didn't really like eating a lot of meat. I didn't have an issue with it. I just didn't feel good when I ate it. So at first I decided, okay, let me just try being vegetarian. And I basically lived off of the same vegetables, which was onion and garlic, which, basically if you cook anything with onion and garlic, you've made a meal.
Nobody was going to make out with you then, but okay.
I'm okay with it. Onion and garlic is worth the sacrifice to me, so we're good. So onion and garlic, bell peppers, tomatoes, crushed tomatoes, zucchini or courgette if you're in the UK, and mushrooms. I think that's basically it. That's basically what I lived off of. And hot sauce. It doesn't always agree with me, but I'm not giving that up. So, we all make our sacrifices.
You do. You find that like one thing, you're like, no way, I don't care. I'm keeping that one thing.
That's true. For me, it's hot sauce. I have to tell you, one time I got so bad, I started eating apples, pink lady apples with hot sauce, which I think is as disgusting as it sounds. But like my addiction, I'm like, when I get addicted to something, I'm like all in on it. So that hot sauce and apple phase was definitely interesting. But yeah, so I took those ingredients.
Safe place.
Yep.
You can judge if you like. I'm still going to eat the hot sauce. That's the thing. But yeah, I just take those ingredients and I make all sorts of things and I mix it out. So like you can make pizza with the zucchini. You can make noodles with it and turn it into like a pasta dish. I would do that a lot, all the time. I would chop it all up. I don't have names for these dishes, but I would just chop them up in different ways and add different spices in. And so that I could make like a vegetarian chili or a curry from the same ingredients but different spices. Pasta was a big one, which isn't really pasta because it's not really pasta without the pasta, but it gave me the illusion of the pasta.
Right.
And then
There's
another
some really
one.
gross pasta substitutes, though.
Yeah.
Did you try any of those? Like the ones that are kind of slimy, like they're made from seaweed stuff or something that you have to rinse like a lot before you can eat them?
So I tried that for the first time last year, and that was like a 3-second experiment, and we decided we're done with
That's
that.
2 more seconds than I give it.
Right. And that is, you know what's funny? There's certain things where I just don't understand that people like them, but I also know that there's things that I love. Like a lot of people don't like cilantro, and I never understood how you could have such a strong dislike of cilantro, but some people just really don't like it. I'm like that with kale. Kale to me is the worst. I don't care what anybody says. I am never eating that if I have a choice. I do not like it. Even with hot sauce on it. And I've tried that. I tried kale chips one time. And yeah, that wasn't fun either.
So cilantro is an interesting one. My mother-in-law has an aversion to cilantro, and apparently it's something within your genetic makeup. Like about half the population can tolerate cilantro, and the other half, and these are not scientific numbers, but the other half, when you eat cilantro, it tastes like soap.
Yeah.
Wow. I did not know that, but that's fascinating and it explains a lot.
It explains all the time you served cilantro to your mom and she was like, bah.
Yeah. You know what? I know she doesn't really like my cooking that much. It's okay. I'm okay with it. But I know I finally cracked the code on black bean burgers with her. And so I feel like that's a little victory right there. I'll let her do her thing and I'll just do mine. I feel like if it's edible to me, then it's okay. But the problem when you cook for yourself and you enjoy cooking and doing that, and you're just cooking for yourself because you have all these allergies, is the truth is I could be the worst cook in the world and I would have no one to tell me otherwise. So what I consider a passion might be potentially killing my boyfriend next time I serve him.
Chloë, you are our season 5 sponsor for Punch Out. So even though we normally don't talk about work at all, I do want to give you the chance, like instead of doing a pre-recorded spot, I want you to talk about what you did with the Punch Out website and how amazing it is and what you do for other people on a daily basis with their Squarespace sites.
Well, the Punch Out podcast was the most fun website to build. I love using Squarespace to build websites because I think that sometimes we get stuck in this idea that it has to be complicated and difficult, and that could stop people. And so all my work is dedicated to helping people use their website to get clients and build their presence and share their message with the world in the easiest way possible. You know, you don't have to have a huge budget. You don't need to be a huge website designer and know code and know all that fancy stuff. To me, it's more about honing in on who you are and figuring out a way to translate that message into pixels. And so that's what I do with Squarespace website design and sometimes coaching, helping other people to share their message and do it themselves. It's important to
very
empower
helpful.
people.
Like you built the whole Punch Out with Us website. It's got all these playful graphics. It doesn't look like a Squarespace site. And I don't mean that as like an insult. I mean, it's very, like, it doesn't look like I could build it myself. I didn't, but you know what I mean? It looks really fancy and fun. And yet you showed me with tutorials and stuff how to update it, like for the next season of Punch Out, which is going to air in October. So you do give people step-by-step tutorials and stuff and how to do everything. So where can people learn more and get some help on their Squarespace site from you? And where can they sign up for your newsletter?
Well, the easiest way is just to go to chloeforbeskk.com. And then to sign up to my newsletter, chloeforbeskk.com/newsletter. And I share everything on my website. I also share it. I've got links to blog posts and YouTube tutorials where I teach you how to do everything yourself. So you don't even need me. If you want to put in the work, you can either invest your time and you could put in the work, and I show you how to do all that yourself, completely free. And but if you want to invest the money and you want to save your time, that's where I come in. So
Chloë is fabulous. If you're listening and you need a website, she does such an amazing job. I had to do very little. I told her like what our podcast is like. I said I want the site to feel like fun and not work. And she made this amazing, perfect website that reflects Katie and my approach to the show. It's just so much fun. So definitely look her up. Now, what happens at dessert time, Chloë? Like when you want dessert, what do you make? And don't say Pink Lady apples with hot sauce. It's not allowed.
I love Pink Lady apples so much. Oh my goodness. But what I usually do is, well, right now I go through phases of different things. Like I said, I get really addicted to certain foods. So whatever my thing is now, that will be what I eat every night for the next, month till I get sick of it. I usually do I sometimes do like a chia pudding. I don't really like chia seeds. I don't like the texture, but I'm trying to force myself. So I'll put a date in there, some banana, some cinnamon, anything. The thing that puts me off food the most is the texture. Mm-hmm. I don't like that in my mouth, but I do that, or I get bejeweled dates and I stuff them with a Brazil nut, which is good selenium for if you have a thyroid condition, and then almond butter, all of the almond butter on everything, and then I'm happy. So, and then when I'm cheating myself and I'm and then when I'm I really, really want something, I know I shouldn't eat it, but I really love it. I am addicted to chips and salsa. That's my thing. Which isn't really a dessert, but I take that over a dessert any day. So
you make no sense to me.
No?
There's dessert people, and then there's appetizer people, and I think it's clear you're an appetizer person and I'm a dessert person, which is perfect when we go out because we won't fight.
Exactly.
You and I will fight because I'm also a dessert person.
Yeah, we'll have that problem.
But I can't have dairy, so you can have all my ice cream.
Deal.
Well, vegan ice cream is the worst and best thing ever created in the history, especially if you get good ones. You have? I found this one good one. It was salted caramel. It was the worst. I wish they never invented it. Sometimes I'm it's good that they're making these foods for people that have allergies. Other times I'm it was good when I didn't have the option of eating all the junk food.
That's true.
So
I've had a lot of really chalky or weird aftertaste ones because they try to substitute the dairy for something that's out of the box. You would never think that you could thicken it with chickpeas. And I'm I don't want chickpeas in my ice cream. Thank you.
Well, I can't say anything because I have been known to make chickpea cookies, are one of my favorite things. I don't really eat them anymore, but I do like chickpea cookies. But I think the key with the ice cream is if you use coconut milk or coconut cream, you're usually fine. When they start going down that road of let's add a million different sweeteners and thickeners and gums, it tastes so bad. It's not even ice cream. I don't know what it is.
Vat of chemicals. But I think chickpeas or anything else that you can grind into a fine powder can be fine in cookies. It gives it a different flavor. But I mean, it's not like you go, chickpea cookies. I think it would be okay.
Chickpea cookies and black bean brownies. Black bean brownies sometimes taste better than real brownies if you get it just right with dates and some cocoa powder. There's a dessert. That's a good one.
I have done the black bean brownie. That one I understand because the black beans kind of sort of get hidden, and I've made avocado mousse and avocado ice cream because again it's sort of that creamy. I remember in high school a friend of mine, she had this big crush on this guy who was vegan, and at the time in the 90s veganism wasn't as well understood as it is now. So I remember standing in her kitchen making brownies with applesauce and all kinds of things. I'm this is weird. And now fast forward a whole bunch of assorted years later, and I'm that's normal.
Yeah.
It's amazing the perspective you get when you experience a problem like that yourself, or even a preference yourself. Thanks for joining us, Chloë. This was so much fun. So
You're
just
so
to
welcome.
give people
Thank
one
you
more
for
chance
having me.
Come find you. What's your website again?
It's just ChloeForbes.com, and all the good stuff's there. It's got all the links.
all the best stuff.
If you
So-
really want to come find me on Twitter at Chloë Forbes-Kindlen, because that's the real place to hang out most of the time.
And if they want to see your DJ videos, where do they go?
No, they don't get to see those.
Oh, so close, Kerry.
Damn, I really thought that would work.
The
Fine.
thing is, if you ever knew the name that I went under, you'd find everything. But that's the thing that I can keep close to my heart. If you don't figure out the name, we'll be okay.
I mean, you've
I will
thrown
dedicate
down
my
the
life.
gauntlet, and we are going to try to find it.
I will dedicate
Oh.
my life to this.
Oh my goodness.